Brian, I'm gonna go to you as how are you maintaining your mental fitness when we went through that transitions?
Yeah. Yeah, a few things that come to mind. I think the first is right, like I took for granted the amount of unlearning that accompanied the learning that I was like taking on as I was working at Better Up, right? And so like because I would say Better Up is probably out of all the places I've worked, and I've been fortunate to work at tons of different organizations at different levels. I would say it has the most like forward and innovative thinking of like how they're trying to approach the culture that they're trying to build. Also very rigorous, and so um, because and I really appreciate what they've built, and I'm leaning into it. But I didn't realize like how much like baggage or just things that I've learned at previous organizations, whether it be around like proving yourself, right? Or just like
Yeah,
showing up and just things that I had to shed that were no longer going to be useful in this new environment. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so there was a significant amount of um unlearning that came with this transition that like I'm still like shedding stuff, right? I would say the second part is like, you spoke about like, I think you just mentioned about like proving yourself, right? And like somebody like telling you to like slow down, like that is still something for me that is like, I'm trying to get out of like prove myself mode, right? Because like when you're like in this proving self, like trying to like prove yourself, I don't know if I'm even saying that the right way. Um, you're like trying to convince others. And when you're trying to convince others, you're trying to convince yourself. And oftentimes you're not like showing up as your most authentic and confident version of yourself. You're showing up as like, and so like there's times where like the relationships that I'm really starting to meet with, like with my manager and like the most authentic relationships that I have are the places where I'm feeling the most confident and are those are the times where I'm not in that moment of like I'm like, I'm trying to show value. I'm trying to like show like, like
yeah.
put this thing forward. And so that's been a lot of what my transition is like and some of the things that I've been learning and how I'm just trying to create like a mentally healthier and fitter space in like my mind.
I love that point you just said, Brian. Like that for me as well was the thing I worked with my coach for the first 6 months and still working with, where I didn't realize how much baggage I carried from my previous corporate role, where I expected, okay, now you're in a job, this is the way you show up, or when you talk in meetings, you're supposed to sound like this. And you could really tell it wasn't going to work here Better Up, because you kind of had to show up in your authentic self. Otherwise, you just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a great example where if you're getting up and just feeling like, oh God, I want to sound smart, or I want to show that I'm adding value, it just doesn't come across right. And every time when I try and come into meetings, I'm trying to like make sure that have I left the baggage behind. And it was actually like something Chuck said when he said that, is like, you don't need to prove yourself to us that you're smart. We already know that. That's why we hired you. Just try and be yourself. So it's, when I show up on calls, client calls, and he's like, I'm bringing you on here to just be yourself and just start talking. And that's a hard one, where you think like, God, I just need to just be myself and just talk. I spent 20 years of your career trying to like show that you're this smart person and you know this and you know that. And that switch in the brain is, it's quite tough.
Yeah.
I can relate to that so much too when you were saying that because I feel like the way that I equated it to like some friends of mine when I was starting is it's almost like if you, especially if you've been at a company previous, if you're changing to a new job and you were at a company previously, it's almost like being at a school where like you know everyone knows you, they know your
Mm.
story, like it's your
Yeah,
clique, right? And then you're the new kid at school and no one knows you, no one knows your stats, no one knows like what you bring to the table besides that you're there. And then you add the layer of it on top of it, which is the fact that BetterUp hires incredible people. And so everyone you meet is just smarter and smarter and smarter. And there's this real sense of, where do I fit in here? How can I show them my stats? But like, you're right, you don't need to. You're not made to feel that way here. But for me, it's that like imposter syndrome voice that sometimes pops up.
mm,